Adam slowly opened his eyes, feeling sore and weak. As his eyes adjusted, he saw blades of grass flailing from a gust of wind. A fully matured dandelion losing its assorted pieces from that same wind, and the trunks of several pine trees. He rolled over onto his back and looked at the startling realization that he was not wearing a stitch of clothing. He sat up suddenly as he realized it had happened again. He had changed. Adam shivered, not from the temperature of the day, as it was actually quite warm out, but from the discovery that what he'd been trying to hide for years and keep under control was coming back with a galaxy-shattering roar. He glanced around and saw he was in the woods alone. That was a good thing, as he remembered one time it had happened when he and Luke had been investigating a case of dark trolls in New York, and he awakened under a bridge to find a fisherman poking him with his pole to see if he was alive. The fisherman had assumed Adam was just another gay boy who met up with somebody on an app like Grindr and had been raped and left for dead. Adam had gone along with it knowing that the truth would have been even more terrifying to tell. Adam Skenador was a skinwalker. He recognized the location he was at. It was a wooded area not far from the farmhouse Trent's grandmother owned. There was a fair chance Adam could make it back to home base without anyone spotting a naked Indian roaming through the woods. Anyone who did might assume he was just drunk off firewater, like so many stereotypes you'd see on television. However, he wasn't drunk, and he wasn't crazy. He was a skinwalker. Inaldlushi. Tears of shame rolled out of Adam's eyes. Skinwalkers were one of the taboo aspects of Navajo culture. Something that no one should want to be. The few times he'd ever heard his grandmother and other elders in the tribe talk about skinwalkers, they were supposedly dark medicine men who turned away from the ways of healing and could either possess or turn into an animal. Skinwalkers were on the same level of tricksters as the coyote, according to some of his people. However, those stories couldn't be true. Adam had never been involved with dark magic, or magic of any kind for that matter. He'd spent his life on the reservation caring for his grandmother, especially in the last couple of years, when her mind was going from Alzheimer's. Most of his experience with the supernatural had come after he'd met Luke. Whenever Adam made the change, there would be a period after he returned to human form where he could remember nothing of what had happened. He'd be going about life and then, without realizing it, he was suddenly somewhere else, naked like he was now, and clueless about how he'd arrived where he was. Little by little, though, the amnesia would lift, and he'd remember everything. What kind of animal he'd inhabited, or transformed into, what he did in animal form, and especially anything he killed. Adam's first transformation had occurred when he was 14 years old. After 6 years of his grandmother being the strong one in the household, she had experienced a heart attack and ended up in the hospital for a few days. Adam remembered feeling so frustrated that his whole world was in danger of being taken from him that he ran off into a field behind the hospital, angry at the world, angry at the Creator, who seemed to be taking his grandmother away from him. He had stopped into a field, fell to his knees, and cried large, angry tears. He had slowly started to recompose himself when he looked across the field and saw a wolf on the other side, staring at him curiously. As if instinctively, Adam stretched his hand out to the wolf, almost beckoning him to come. Then he became the wolf. Adam remembered that first transformation. He had raced across the fields, up a plateau and down again, sighting a rabbit, munching on forage nearby, and then savagely killing and eating that rabbit. When he'd finally released the wolf and turned back into a human again, he still had some of the blood from the rabbit on his lips. He'd wound up about 15 miles from the hospital, completely naked, and had no idea how he'd gotten there. He'd found a road close by and flagged down the first car he saw. Inside were a couple of Navajo women in business attire. Adam later found out that they worked together at a hotel in Ganado, who immediately leapt out and put a blanket around him. Adam had told them about his grandmother being in the hospital, and the women took him back, but not before stopping off at one woman's house to get him some clothes. He never saw the women again, but he thought they'd probably assumed he'd been kidnapped by some pedophile, violated, and left for dead. Strangely enough, the women would probably prefer that scenario to the truth. Anger was the trigger. That was what Adam learned after several other instances during his teenage years. One was after some high school bullies had pushed him around as a freshman and called him a freak because he was skinnier than the other boys at school. Another occurred after he and his grandmother had returned from a powwow in Shiprock, New Mexico, and discovered that their home had been ransacked by a couple of drunks. The worst instance had been when he'd gone to a pharmacy in Window Rock to refill a prescription for his grandmother, walked in on a robbery in progress, and been stabbed by one of the perpetrators. That time, he turned into an animal on his own without any creature nearby. He became a bear, tracked down the two men who'd robbed the pharmacy, and sliced them to ribbons. After that instance, Adam had vowed to control his temper, lest the desire to shift into animal form should ever come back.